Hey YouTube, what is up? Today I'm going to be reviewing the D802 from FX Audio. It is a budget audiophile amplifier. So let's start off with the specs. This amp claims it can do 80 watts a channel at 4 ohms and 50 watts a channel at 8 ohms. The built-in DAC can output 24-bit with a sample rate of 92 kHz over USB, and 24-bit with a sample rate of 192 kHz over the optical interface. It does come with a 32-volt 5-amp power supply, but you can run it on 24 volts or even as low as 12 volts as long as you have the amperage to compensate. But I do like how they include the OP power supply instead of some cheap surplus piece of shit that makes the amp cut out at high volume. This amp is 7 inches long, 4.5 inches wide, and 1.25 inch tall. For interfacing, this amp is digital only, which means you can't use a headphone jack or RCAs. You have to use either USB optical or coaxial. And that does kind of suck, but if you're using this amp for PC speakers, then it's not really a big deal unless you're using all of your USB ports and, well...
No, I'm sorry, I can't spare it.
For an amp that goes along the lines of cheap to mid-range, this thing feels really solid and has a thick brushed aluminum casing, and the display on this thing is surprisingly really high quality as well. It is a monochrome flash OLED screen with a pretty good PPI. I mean, you can still see the pixels, but it's tight enough to the point where they're using a Times New Roman font, and it still looks pretty clear. You'd think they'd put in a VFD or some cheaper display like that, but no, it's actually a really nice display, although it is on the smaller side and can't be seen very well from a distance. This thing has an STA326 Class D amp chip from SD Microelectronics, and I looked it up and it's a pretty good looking chip. The capacitors, on the other hand, are... ooh, no. They're 35 volt 1800 microfarad Leland caps. And, well, Leland caps aren't that great. They get the job done, but they're more prone to bulging than, say, a Sanyo, Panasonic, or a Rubicon capacitor. And on top of that, these caps are pretty beat up looking, which would suggest that they're used, so a capacitor upgrade wouldn't be a bad idea if you get this amp. I'm personally not all that concerned about it, because if they pop, then I'll just replace them. The volume is adjusted digitally, and the rotary encoder for the volume is a little bit on the slower side, which means if you turn the knob too fast, then it will either freeze up until you slow down, or the volume will go in the other direction. So if you forget to turn down the volume and then you are greeted with a loud noise and then you crank the volume down as fast as you can, then it might actually get louder. So just be sure to move it slowly and you'll have no problem. This amp has a 2-band EQ titled Treble and Bass, so, not much fancy going on there. It also has EQ presets, which I think sound like total ass. It sounds better if you just leave it on normal and then manually adjust the EQ yourself. It has 2-way binding posts, so you can use banana plugs and give it a glass of wine and push it in easy and smooth. Or you can just straight up butt it with bare wire. This thing comes with a 32-volt 5-amp power supply, some instructions in both English and Mandarin, a translucent blue male-to-male A to B USB cable. It does not come with an optical or coaxial cable. It does not come with speaker wire, but it does come with a remote so you can use it at a distance, or maybe even hook it up to your TV if your TV has a SPDIF or coaxial port on the back. And I don't mean the coaxial where you would plug in your cable, I mean the little black and orange RCA that should be labeled coaxial. This thing sounds really good. It has lots of depth, no perceivable distortion, and lots of power. The volume goes all the way up to 99, and I think that's too loud even with the volume as low as 20. And this is on my Kanto Yumis, which aren't really all that hard to drive, but they're not exactly pushovers. Now, I did notice that there is occasionally some heavy distortion when a bass note hits, but I think this is a driver issue because if I unplug the USB and then plug it back in, it's fixed, it goes away. And like I said, this isn't a common issue that I have, it's just something that happens sporadically, and when it does, I just unplug the USB and that usually fixes it. I don't know how I'm going to test this thing though. So I guess I'm going to play some songs on different amps, and man, this is not going to be fun or easy, so you guys better appreciate this. And if you don't, I will find you, and I will kill you. So here's some of the thoughts I have on the amplifier. I hate the rubber feet on this thing. They don't do jack shit. These things will slide around your desk like hockey pucks. I had to put different feet on them because they slide way too easily. You'd have more friction if you just removed the feet and had bare metal on glass. The j***hole who made those feet should have been fired. Now I love how this thing is small. It's only a little bigger than my hand, and I have no issues with fitting it on my relatively cramped desk, so if space is a problem for you, then this thing will fit in perfectly. In conclusion, I'd say this is a really good amp for a budget audiophile. It looks cool, it's sturdy, it sounds fantastic. It can power most bookshelf speakers, if not all bookshelf speakers, and it can power a pretty large range of some of the more efficient studio monitors out there. It's not too pricey either. I mean, yeah, $105 isn't exactly chump change, but for what you get, it's pretty good. I mean, other amps in this range would cost you at least $130, and some of them don't put out as much power as this amp, or at least on paper they don't. Yes, there is the driver issue.
You're not perfect.
But it's not really that annoying for me because, personally, the distortion only happens every now and then, and it's not a common problem, but this amp does seem to have a problem in Adobe Audition. I've noticed that whenever I'm editing audio, it's kind of jumpy and wonky. I don't know why. I'm guessing it's a driver problem because it only happens in Audition. So this would not be a good amp for audio editing, but if you're listening to music or whatever, then there's no issue there. It works great with FooBar, iTunes, Chrome, Firefox, whatever. So yeah, I would definitely recommend this amp for someone who's looking to hook some bookshelf speakers up to their television or power the speakers in their desk setup. If you do want to just scrap the drivers altogether, you could use the SPDIF or coaxial interface. That might be a little better. I don't have SPDIF or coaxial or anything, I'm just using USB, so it's probably my problem. But yeah, I would definitely recommend this amp to anybody who's looking for a good amp on a budget.